My name is Monica Gleberman, and you're listening to Silence on Set podcast. On today's podcast, we're speaking to the star of American fiction, Jeffrey Wright. Jeffrey Wright plays Monk, who's a frustrated novelist that's fed up with the establishment that profits from Black entertainment that relies on tired and offensive tropes. To prove his point, he uses a pen name to write an outlandish Black book of his own, a book that propels him to the heart of hypocrisy and the madness he claims to disdain. So to talk about what it was like getting the role, how he created Monk, and the important message that American fiction portrays, here's the one and only Jeffrey Wright. So I am so honored to have you on here today because I have admired your work for years. I think you're one of the best actors. So I want to just thank you so much for taking time out to talk with me today.
Well, thank you. It's very kind.
So I'm going to jump right into, it's just kind of crazy to me how you've done project after project after project that have been major successes. And obviously we have, American fiction, which we'll get to really quickly, but how do you choose your projects? Because the projects you choose are so different and are such a range of characters, but they all do so well and resonate with people.
Well, I just try to choose a good piece of writing first and foremost. I've got a pretty good eye, I guess, for words on the page. So that's the first order of business. And then the next consideration is the collaboration, who I'm working with, who else is interested in the project. And if you have those two and they're good, then that's usually a recipe for something interesting. If the script interests me, I tend to think it will interest an audience. I tend to think I'm a pretty good curator, maybe, for audiences. I also like to find things that are new for me and ideally new for an audience. I don't really like to do the same types of films or stories over and over or play the same character. It's just not the way I like to go about it. The actors that I really appreciated early on, even when I was younger, were actors like Dustin Hoffman, who was one person in Marathon Man, another in Midnight Cowboy, and then another in Papillon. I just love the way he was able to recreate himself and build new humans with every opportunity. It just seemed like something kind of magical and something worth exploring if I were to become an actor. So I like to keep it, keep it moving, keep it fresh, keep it moving.
Well, it's definitely working. And it's funny that those are the idols you look up to because you are one of them. You've been able to accomplish that. So congratulations, because every time I see you, it's just a different character, a different person. It's like I forget you and there's just someone new that I'm meeting. So you definitely have accomplished that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. If you can't beat them, confuse them. Some kind of motto.
So let's talk about American fiction, obviously, which is so funny because, like I said, every movie between Asteroid City, you're in Rustin. I mean, you're in Sandman, you've been in, I could list on and on. And so it's not like you're new to the game and it's not like you haven't been in a huge thing. But I'm so happy out of every project that you've been in, American fiction is kind of on this Oscar run, which I'm keeping my fingers crossed for it to go all the way. But talk to me about Monk and why you decided, when you read the script, that this is something that you really want to show, specifically right now in our culture, why this is so important.
Well, I think the film is dealing with subjects and conversations that are ongoing in our country and really around the world, questions of identity, race, nationality, culture, history, the language that we use to discuss all of that. The film is really throwing a few darts at all of us, really, in the ways we go about examining these issues, including ourselves. There's a fair degree of self-criticism within this film, particularly of Monk, the character that I play. He's not by any means without his flaws. In fact, his flaws are in some ways his primary characteristics. But nonetheless, there's a humanness to this guy, and that has to do in many ways because of his relationship to his family, which too is flawed, which too is, at times dysfunctional, at times functional, at times loving in spite of itself, which is kind of like anyone else's family. And I think it's relatable in that way. Yes, it's in this instance populated by Tracy Ellis Ross and Sterling K. Brown and the legendary Leslie Uggams and myself. Yes, we're Black folks, but it's a family like any other. And there was something really beautiful about that, something really inviting about that this is a story that provides space for anyone across backgrounds to find themselves within and find maybe a little bit of comfort in, particularly now when we don't often find places where we can all come together and sit for a while. We're at such a divisive time in our country, such a kind of embittered time. And we're having a bit of a send up at all of that. And also, again, I think showing that, there's more common ground maybe that we enjoy, more common ground than that we enjoy, that we actually appreciate. We don't tend to look for common ground now. We look for the opposite sides of the poles, So maybe the film, if only for the 2 hours that it's running, can allow folks to come together and enjoy the same space.
Well, I also really love the juxtaposition between the family, because we don't see that very often with the African-American family, which I think obviously we have ways to go, but where they're educated and they, are all making money and have jobs and all of these things. And we get to see that, and they love each other. And yes, they're dysfunctional, and all families have that, but we see that versus Monk's book and his book Journey, which is almost poking fun of the opposite, right? Of like what, these stereotypes and these things that people might think is true. And so what was it like playing the two sides of that, of showing kind of like something real and then something that's just so can't believe that the world thinks that's real, like the two next to each other?
Well, you just answered it. I think the two sides, if you will, are born of one another. And yes, Monk writes a book under an assumed name, a book that he writes as a joke, but that ultimately becomes this huge bestseller, the biggest selling novel of his career, because everything else that he writes is kind of esoteric and peculiar to certain tastes. And so he writes what he out of a fit of outrage, what he thinks the masses want. But he does it under this assumed name, so he goes about playing this identity that's so far away from himself, while, as you say, at the same time, he's living this life of ordinary challenges and pressures that come with having to become the caretaker of his mother. Meanwhile, he's playing this outrageous stereotype in public, but his real life is deeply complex and human, and that's the story. I think there's a kind of wonderfully subversive element really about the family portrait, because it's not one that we see often. It's not one that I've been asked to play ever before. When I saw the film for the first time with an audience a couple of weeks ago, I looked up on the screen at one point and I just said to myself, wow, what beautiful people. And it really is that simple. Meanwhile, yes, we got this absurd, over you know, overdrawn, weird, stereotypical character that he's playing and playing poorly. And this is what the world perceives him to be, when really, you know, he's a man like any other man. And in the book that this is based on, Percival Everett's novel, there are these wonderful moments, these kind of meditative moments where Monk kind of drifts off from the narrative and describes his interests. And they're interests in things like fly fishing. And he describes the complications of outwitting a fish. Or he describes woodworking and the smell of cut wood, and he describes the grain of certain woods. And then there are these wonderful kind of poetical, quiet moments that really give a sense of who he is and what his interests are and his desires for solitude and all of these things that make him up, completely opposite of what the world wants from him in terms of his writing, and then how the world sees him when he puts on the mask of this character, Stagg Arlee. And so I think the two sides, again, of the story blend very well together, and they have a kind of symbiotic purpose, and super fun to play both those extremes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was funny because when the movie first came out, of course, everyone's talking about the book section, which again is important. I think it caused a lot of discussion, between me and my friends and and oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. But to me, it was the family that I felt like outweighed it more, just because we don't get to see that as often. So I mean, they're both equally as important, but it was just so nice to see a family together, working together and figuring things out.
Exactly. For me, the family is the heart and soul. The movie is an examination of love in many aspects. It's about love of self, love of the other, and love of family. It's about love in the golden years for one of the characters in the film. And the family is really at the heart of that. It's what resonated with me most deeply. Like Cord Jefferson, who adapted this novel and directed the film, I felt a very intimate understanding of Monk's journey. Cord describes having read the book a couple of years after his mother passed, and that he had played caretaker to her along with his siblings. Likewise, about a bit more than a year before I received the script, my mother passed as well. I had the good fortune of being raised by two women, my mother and her eldest sister, my aunt, who's now 94 years old, who came to live with me from DC to New York after my mom passed. So I played caretaker to my mom in the time before she passed, and then to my aunt. And the challenges that come with that are very specific and very heavy. And the entire family then, because my mom was such a presence, turned to me to be the adult in the room. And so that's at the center of Monk's story too. And it moved me. And while our film has only recently been out in limited theaters, many people have seen it because we've had a lot of screenings, obviously, after the Toronto Film Festival. And so many people have come up to me and described the ways in which that caretaker aspect of the film moved them and felt like a piece of them because they had experienced that as well. So the family dynamic provides a space for such wonderful dynamics and such emotional depth. I really think that it is in some way, while we're not trying to provide necessarily answers to the questions that are raised around the social commentary and satirical side, but the family in some ways is at least a response to all that. And I think it's a beautiful one.
For the book section, was there a part that you read and you were just like, this is spot on? Hilarious. I'm so excited. I can't wait to film this and for people to see this because I'm just so sick of hearing this, or I just want to show how ridiculous this is.
The first scene,
Oh,
which is
really?
prior to the book, but has to do with the issues raised by the book. It's a conversation in a classroom. Monk is also a professor of English, and he's having this exchange with a student, really with the entire class, about their sensitivity to race, language, and about their not appreciating context for the language. And it's a conversation that's being had, across our country, a conversation that we don't have well because we lack really a fluency in race and identity and culture and history as relates to race. We're afraid of it, or we're traumatized by it. Whatever the combination of things is, the end result is we don't do it well. And we make mistake after mistake, and we never really progress. And I thought that first scene was so well drawn and so timely. And it was one that I had been having in my head and with friends as we observe, what's happening around us. So that was one that I was really keen to jump into. So when I read the script, that first scene hooked me in. I said, okay, yeah, this is interesting. This will be fun.
I guess I'll ask one of my last questions is a two-parter, which is obviously I don't think anyone sets out to make a movie and then hope, you obviously want people to see it, but I don't think you go, oh, awards. So I wanted to know for you, how has this been? Has it been super overwhelming? I mean, it's kind of just taken off like wildfire, which is amazing. But I think it's hopefully, like I said, going to go all the way. Keeping my fingers crossed. So what does that feel like? And then what are you most excited for fans or for people that go to see it to walk out of the theater saying, do you want them changed, feeling a certain way, open to discussion? What are you hoping when they walk out?
Yeah. If I'm on set working on a film and I'm thinking about awards and stuff like that, I'm doing it wrong. That kind of thinking absolutely gets in the way of the process and is distracting from what you're doing in a way that is, can have serious negative impact on the performance and on the film. So I hit delete very quickly if anything like that floats into my head. Obviously, now that the film's out, it's really wonderful that people have received it well, that it's getting that kind of recognition, that there is that buzz around it. It's so, I think, a little bit strange to all of a sudden be competitive with fellow artists. It's a weird vibe, but it is what it is. I guess it's better than the alternative when there's no interest at all. So we'll take this. And I guess, if they want to hand out these things, sure, we'll have those. We'll have those too. So it's exciting. It's a lot. There are a lot of great films, a lot of great performances that are never recognized. It's not really a reflection on the work. There are a lot of factors that come into it. We'll see how it plays out. I'm just pleased that we've made what we consider a good film, a film that we're proud of, and that to this point has been well received. And I hope audiences, when they get into the theater, I hope it raises interesting questions. But I think more so, I really hope that they, no matter who they are, whatever their background may be, wherever they live in this country, wherever they live in the world, I hope that they're able to find something of themselves inside our film. It's really that simple. And I think they will.
Well, I definitely did. And I probably couldn't look or be further from, the backgrounds of all of those characters, but I did. And I just want to thank you because it created such a safe space for me and friends to talk about and the discussion, I feel like, side of the film, and then to also talk about the family and just be so connected to this family and just see the love that's there and to want it more on screen. I urged for more and I just felt like I wanted more and I didn't want to say goodbye to them. And I think that's a huge testament to you guys and all of the ensemble to make that happen. And then the discussion section, to make someone feel safe is really hard. And to do that in this film in a satirical way, but to make us all feel comfortable, to be able to have conversations, again, is another feat that I can't name another movie that has made that happen. So I just want to thank you so much for all the hard work that you put into it. 90% of this lies on your shoulders. I mean, you're in almost every scene, and it just changed me. I don't know. I can't explain it. I walked out of the theater and I was just changed by it. So I just want to thank you so much for your performance.
Oh, that's super cool. That's really nice to hear. Thank you so much, Monica.
Well, thank you. Have a great rest of the day. I appreciate you taking time because I know everyone wants to talk to you, but just congratulations. This is so well deserved. Like I said, you're an amazing actor, and it's just your time. And I'm like this, rooting for you behind the scenes. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Enjoy your holidays.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Cool. All right.
Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
See ya.
Hope you guys enjoyed listening to Jeffrey Wright talk about American Fiction and what it was like for him to create Monk, why the movie is so important, and again, why everyone should be going out and seeing it. American Fiction premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival on September 8th, 2023, where it won the People's Choice Award. It received a limited theatrical release by Amazon MGM Studios on December 15th, 2023, with an expansion on December 22nd, 2023. So make sure you go and check it out because it's currently in theaters now. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you're updated on all of our latest podcasts, and head over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe so you're updated on all of our video content.